I did my presentation on Bill Evans, and I'll begin by giving a bit of background on him, and then doing an analysis of the first two choruses of his solo on the song What Is This Thing Called Love off the album Portrait in Jazz, which was released in 1960. He was born August 16th, 1929, in New Jersey. His first teacher was his mother. He studied at Southeastern Louisiana College and graduated with a teaching degree in 1950. After graduating, he moved to New York City, where he worked as a pianist briefly, before he was drafted into the Army, where he played flute in the Fifth Army Band. In 1956, he then moved back to New York City and became an active participant in the jazz scene. Alright, I'm going to play through this solo in 4-bar sections and discuss some things that I've noticed. So let's start the first 4 bars. So the first thing I noticed was how he emphasizes certain notes. And the most obvious way he does that is by accenting. So you can see he tends to accent the peaks of phrases, the highest notes. He also sometimes will accent the end of a phrase, like in the first bar. Right. Another way that he emphasizes notes is through sort of chromatic patterns. So you can see that in the first bar. You've got that chromatic little scale. It brings you back to the E flat. Well, it doesn't really lead you to the E flat. It goes down to D flat, and then you jump back to E flat. And there's another example in measure 5. That's interesting because the 7 and the 9 of the F minor major 7 are accented, but then there's this chromatic which leads to the F. So the F is the F is emphasized, but it's not accented. So to analyze what's going on harmonically, you've got this C7 flat 9 arpeggio, just a straight arpeggio, and then this F minor major 7 add 9 arpeggio. Okay, moving on to the next 4 bars. Let me play that a little more in time. So again, we have these accents at the peaks of phrases. That's a great example of one. He really accents all of those top notes. Again, peak of the phrase, peak of the phrase. So in that 8th bar, we see the first surrounding figure, and there's many surrounding figures in this solo. So what I mean by surrounding figure is when you come from above and then below a note, or it could be the other way around, below and then above. In this case, it's above, below, and then it's surrounding the note C. And that's yet another way of emphasizing a note. So we have this arpeggio pattern, and then this sort of G-altered scale. Those all come out of the G-altered scale. Right, and then we have a C major 7 arpeggio pattern here. And then the surrounding figure. Okay, moving on to the next A section. So the first thing I noticed about these 8 bars is the amount of rhythmic variation. So in just 8 bars, there's 8th notes, there's 16th notes, there's quarter note triplets, and there's 8th note triplets. So this quarter note rhythm is a pattern that he continues throughout this section. And again, we see it here. An interesting thing is in that 3rd bar of the 2nd A section, on the F minor major 7, this pattern is harmonically almost exactly the same as in measure 3. Here's measure 3. And here's the 3rd measure of the 2nd A section. Right? So the difference is the rhythm. So it begins with the C altered sort of arpeggio. You've got the sharp 9, flat 9, flat 13, 3. And again, the accents at the top of the phrase. And that's sort of this D altered scale plus a G. Again, there's a surrounding figure as well as the quarter note triplet pattern. So we're surrounding a G. And then another surrounding figure leading into another quarter note triplet. So we're surrounding the E. And here's a C major 7 arpeggio. Flat 9. Sort of chromatic scale a little bit. Okay, moving on to the B section. Here's a surrounding figure. Here's another surrounding figure. All right, notice this is the very first time the left hand comes in, so a sparse left hand in this solo. So something to be said about the left hand, the comping, is it's very purposeful. It's very much part of the rhythm of the solo. It's not sort of a background rhythm that continues. It interacts with the right hand. And you have sort of this rhythmic displacement in the left hand on measure 21. Comes earlier that time, and sort of the same rhythm in the right hand, excuse me, after that. So all right, so and then we have this long chromatic scale, and of course he lands on a great note. He manages to fit that long scale and still land on the 3rd, right, as we're on C7. And it's this altered sort of lick. And then we've got this interesting pattern. Let me play that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me play that from the chromatic scale. So this sort of has a rhythmic displacement thing. Measure 3 of the 3rd A section. of context, but it's this pattern gets repeated up an octave. Surrounding figure. And there's an accent at the top of the phrase, another accent, and then ending with a surrounding figure. All right, moving on to the second chorus. So the first thing I noticed here was his use of space. He starts with a full measure of rest, and in the fourth bar he only plays one beat, and then is resting until the and of 4 in the next measure, where he has his left hand comp, and it's anticipating the next measure, so it's almost as if it was a full measure of rest. And that's another thing, is he's almost always comping on offbeats. There are only a couple examples where he's on the downbeat. Like here, he's on the downbeat. And there's another surrounding figure. And then sort of a surrounding figure. There's a surrounding figure. This passage is packed full of surrounding figures. So in measure 45, that system, right here, and then that was all C. And then we've got a chromatic scale. So the left hand is very much interacting in this B section. So that was just a B flat, very simple B flat arpeggio with a leading tone, the 4 or the 11. And then another simple pattern of emphasizing the 7 and 3 of the A flat 7. This is a mistake. It should be the 6 and 3 of A flat 7. And then we see the return of the quarter note triplet in, what is that, measure 55 and 56. So in the very last A section of these first two choruses, there's this quarter note triplet pattern with variations, so it doesn't stay the same rhythm throughout. There's interesting little slight variations. So you can see, for instance, in the third measure, the quarter note triplet happens in the middle of the bar, and then in the fourth measure, it starts with it starts with eighth notes and then goes into that quarter note triplet pattern. So there's a mix of eighth notes and quarter note triplets. And then the last thing that's interesting is the note that's being emphasized, and this is a new technique of emphasizing a note is sort of having it be a pedal point, except it's in the top. So that C is being emphasized by being repeated, I guess. Right, and then the F becomes the emphasized note in the fourth bar. And then finally the G. And then very lastly the C. Right, so it ends with that C. It starts with that C. All right, thanks so much for listening, and I've attached a PDF in case you'd like to check out the transcription more. Bye.